The last thing Marcus remembered was falling asleep on his couch, half a glass of whiskey on the coffee table, and the news droning in the background. Ordinary, forgettable. The kind of night that leaves no mark. So why couldn't he wake up? The dream, if that's what it was, looked like his apartment. Same water stain on the ceiling shaped like a boot. Same crooked blinds he'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. But the light was wrong. Not dim, not dark, just absent. Like the room was lit by something that had no source, casting no shadows. Marcus sat up, rubbed his face. "Okay," he said, because saying things out loud had always made them more real. Nothing answered. But something shifted, a sound just beneath hearing, like a word spoken in a frequency his ears weren't built for. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was there. Buildings, streets, the blinking red light on the tower across the block. All of it perfectly still. Not quiet, still. Like a photograph of a city rather than a city itself. No wind, no movement, not a single car. Marcus pressed his hand to the glass. It was warm. This is a dream. I'll wake up in a second. He waited. He didn't wake up. Marcus pulled his hand from the glass. The handprint stayed. Not a smudge. A perfect white impression, like something on the other side had pressed back. He stepped away from the window. The apartment felt smaller than it had a moment ago. Not dramatically, just enough that he noticed. Like the walls had exhaled and forgotten to inhale again. He told himself it was the light playing tricks. He was good at telling himself things. He stepped out into the hallway. Behind him, the door clicked shut. He didn't remember closing it. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. Not infinitely, just more. Like someone had quietly inserted an extra 20 feet when he wasn't looking. He started walking toward the stairs. Behind him, very softly, something in his apartment moved. He didn't look back. The stairwell was wrong. Not obviously, not in a way he could point to and say there. That's the thing that's wrong. It was more that descending felt like it should be taking him somewhere, and it wasn't. Floor 4, see floor 3, floor 2. The air got heavier with each step, the way it does deep underground, and the sound of his footsteps was just slightly delayed. A half beat behind him, like an echo with nowhere to echo from. He stopped on the second floor landing. His footsteps kept going for one more step. Then silence. He continued down. Outside, the street was frozen. Still that photograph of a city, every detail perfect and lifeless. He looked up. The sky was the right color for 2 in the morning, deep blue-black, a few stars. But there was no moon. There should have been a moon. He'd seen it earlier, heavy and full, hanging low over the building across the street. Now there was just the space where it should have been. Then, see, from somewhere above him, not close, not far, a door closed. He looked up at his building, 4th floor, his window. The light in his apartment was off now. He had left it on. He started walking. The city went on the way cities do, block after block, corner after corner. But it began to feel less like walking through a place and more like the place was being generated just ahead of him. Like it only existed as far as he could see, and beyond that was nothing. And the nothing kept retreating as he moved forward. He turned a corner he didn't recognize. In the middle of the block, under a streetlight that buzzed with a sound just at the edge of hearing, there was a payphone. He hadn't seen a payphone in years. The receiver was off the hook, hanging by its cord, swaying very slightly. There was no wind. He walked past it. 10 steps later, he heard it, faint, tinny, distant, like sound traveling through water. A dial tone. He stopped. It wasn't a dial tone, he realized. It was breathing. He kept walking, faster now. He didn't look back. But for the rest of the dream, however long it lasted, however far he walked, he could hear it, just behind him, matching his pace exactly. He walked for what felt like an hour. The breathing never stopped. He'd tried everything a logical mind tries. He counted his steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, focusing on the numbers, making them loud in his head, crowding everything else out. He recited things he knew, the tensile strength of structural steel, the boiling point of water, his mother's phone number, his own birthday. The breathing kept pace. At some point, he started talking. Not to it, just out loud to himself. This is REM sleep. The brain generates threat responses during REM. The sense of being followed is one of the most common dream experiences documented. There is nothing behind me. He turned around. The street was empty. Of course it was. He turned back around. 12 feet ahead of him, in the middle of the sidewalk, was a door. Just a door. Freestanding. No frame. No wall. No building. Just a door standing upright on the pavement. Wooden. Painted white once, though the paint had gone gray and was peeling at the edges. A tarnished brass handle. The kind of door you'd find on any house on any street. He stared at it for a long time. Then he walked around it. On the other side was the same door, same peeling paint, same handle. There was no back to it. It was just a door on both sides, standing in the street. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes. Okay. He said it until it stopped meaning anything. He doesn't know when he started running. One moment he was walking, fast, measured, eye-controlled. And then his body made a decision his mind hadn't approved, and he was running, full sprint, the silent city blurring past him, his breath ragged and loud and real, the only real sound in the world. He ran until his legs gave. He looked up. He was back on his street, his building directly across from him. 4th floor window, dark. The payphone on the corner, receiver off the hook, swaying. He had run in a perfect circle without turning once. Something in him went very quiet. He sat down on the curb, just sat, knees up, staring at the pavement between his feet. A crack ran through the concrete in a jagged line, and he focused on it, traced it with his eyes, back and forth. Because it was something finite, something with a beginning and an end. The breathing had stopped. That was almost worse. There are no such things as ghosts. There is no such thing as a haunting. There is no such thing as anything that can't be explained. I am asleep on my couch and my brain is... He heard his own voice, coming from behind him. The same words, his exact cadence, his exact pitch, spoken back to him in a tone that was almost gentle, so almost kind, like a lullaby. Marcus stood up so fast he stumbled. He spun around. Empty street, empty city, the photograph. But the payphone receiver was still now, no longer swaying. He screamed. Once, short, involuntary, the sound ripped out of him before he could stop it. It hit the buildings and didn't echo. It just stopped, swallowed by the stillness, like the city had absorbed it and kept it. And in the silence that followed, very softly, the city gave it back. His scream, from every direction at once, from the windows and the rooftops and the storm drains in the gutter. His own voice, fragmented, overlapping in pieces. Some too high, some too slow, some almost musical. Marcus put his hands over his ears. It didn't help. He could hear it inside his head now, too. He was in the elevator. He didn't remember choosing the elevator. The doors closed. It stopped at the 3rd floor. The doors opened. At the far end of the hall, just at the edge of the light, something was standing. He couldn't see it clearly. He didn't want to. He fixed his eyes on the elevator buttons and jabbed 4. Jabbed it again. I kept jabbing it, his finger going white at the tip. The doors stayed open. The thing at the end of the hall didn't move, but it was closer than it had been. He hadn't seen it move, so it was just closer. He pressed himself into the back corner of the elevator, and he laughed. It started as something controlled and became something else entirely. high and loose and wrong. The laugh of a man whose grip on the situation had not slipped, but shattered. The laugh of someone who has run out of explanations and found that without them there is nothing left to stand on. The doors finally closed. The elevator went up. Marcus slid down the elevator wall until he was sitting on the floor. He was still laughing, softer now, quieter, almost like crying. The elevator doors opened and closed, so like breathing. Eventually, he did get up. He walked to his apartment door, put his key in the lock. The key fit perfectly. The lock turned. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. His apartment, dark and still and exactly as he'd left it. The whiskey glass on the coffee table, the news still on the TV, muted, the anchor's mouth moving silently, the couch with the indent from where he'd been sleeping. He crossed the room and stood over the couch and looked down at himself. He was still there, still asleep, breathing slow and even, one arm dangling off the cushion, the picture of a man with nothing on his mind. Marcus reached down and grabbed his own shoulder and shook it, hard, then harder. He was shouting. He could feel it in his throat, the raw tearing of it, but no sound came out. His sleeping body didn't stir, didn't flinch, just kept breathing, slow and even, indifferent as the dead. He shook until his arms gave out. Then he straightened up and stood there in the sourceless light of the dream and understood, not as a thought, but as a physical sensation, like the floor dropping an inch beneath your feet, that he was not going to wake up, not because something was holding him here, but because the him on the couch was not waiting for him to come back. Whatever was sleeping there, it wore his face and breathed his breath. It would get up in the morning and make coffee and go to work and talk to people and live his life without him, and it would do all of that. A level equals moderate greater than perfectly, and no one would notice, and no one would ask. And he would be here, in the space between seconds, in the dark, where something had learned his voice and memorized his fears and paced its breathing to match his steps, so where it had always been waiting. Marcus sat down on the floor of his own apartment. He didn't scream, he didn't cry, he didn't laugh. He just sat, and in a voice that was almost his, almost, but with something underneath it now, something that had always been underneath it, even before the dream, even in the waking world. He began to speak. He said, "I know," and the thing that had learned his voice said nothing, because it didn't need to anymore. On the couch, so the man who was not Marcus smiled in his sleep. The whiskey glass sat untouched. The news played on.